Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Dallas, today we're here to talk about 3 immediate changes you can make.
We are. So there's a couple of, I would say there's a fair few strategies that are the go-to tools in the toolkit that we use all the time. And so today we just wanted to go through 3 that we see that are very common straight off the bat. That a new client walks in to see us, a 55-year-old couple, 10 years out from retirement. What are the things that we go to? And it's probably a lot less exciting than what people would think when they go and see a financial advisor. We don't have any sort of magic IPOs or any U-Butte fund that we can put you in.
I get excited.
Yeah.
I get excited.
Well, so do I, but we're weirdos, mate.
Because
That's a
part
different thing.
Part of this is the victimless crime of taking money from the ATA.
One of these days the ATA is going to listen to this and they're going to audit us. So we'll go through these in order of what I would consider these 3 things flow in order of what we kind of look at firstly. So the first one that we do for most new clients is that we look to cut their expenses, their living expenses by 10 to 30%. Now, whenever we say that, people immediately tense up and go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to not go on a holiday this year or doing like that. Now, we've talked about this at length, but for this is not about, it's not about us saying you must live like a monk and eat beans for dinner every night. What we actually tend to find though is that in most people's expenses, there are some things that they're spending money on that they're just not getting any enjoyment out of. And so that's the sort of things that we look to go through just very quickly and go, something will jump out that we go, you haven't looked at that expense for a while. It seems higher than what it needs to be based on your lifestyle. Can we look to pick up a bit of a cost saving in that area?
Yeah, look, and there's probably 2 categories of that. There's things that people don't get any enjoyment out of anymore.
Yep.
There's other expenses that arguably someone still gets some enjoyment out of.
Yep.
However, when you explain to them, okay, the trade-off is that if you spend more here, you spend less in other areas, and that less in other areas may be less holidays, maybe less of the real stuff that they want to do. They start to actually say then, okay, maybe it's not that important. So I'm still enjoying it. But
well, that's I think a big thing that we like to look at with all of our clients is that you more so than me. I hate looking at budgets just in general, but I think that there are some things that jump out as if we all had unlimited money, then we wouldn't have to have this debate. If we all had unlimited money, we could all drive around a brand new car, and we're not trading anything off for that.
Yeah, the funny thing is we've seen people like that.
Yeah.
And we've seen people. We don't have any Russian oil billionaires as clients, but we've seen people maybe in the medical profession that earn big money, or they run their own business and they earn huge money in terms of of an income. And those same, most of those people are actually saying, we don't know where all the money goes, and we're stressed out, and we're all this, and we're not having any fun, and what I find, I guess it's like giving a kid 10 bags of lollies. Like what they're going to do is they're going to eat all of those lollies in a day, and they're not going to get any enjoyment out of that.
That's right.
Like they're going to feel like terrible, and then they're going to want more and more and more. And as opposed to saying, for example, when we were on holidays recently, I gave Richie, a 4-year-old, a packet of, like a tin of mints, like a tin of little, forget the name of the mints, but a little tin of mints. And I said, Now, this has got to last you and your sister all day.
Yeah.
So he actually got into the habit of rationing them out, and he was actually really getting enjoyment out of that. So like, and sometimes I have to pull him up and say, "Oh no, yours just had one of those." Like, it's going to. So that in another hour or half an hour, they'd have another one each. And it was really a little bit of a treat for holidays. So that's probably the analogy that I use when I see people with huge money, huge incomes. They're like a toddler that's being given 5 bags of olives in a day, as opposed to they're actually not getting any more enjoyment.
No, and that's why we talk about cutting your expenses by 10 to 30%, and you'll notice that it's not a dollar amount; it's a percentage thing.
Percentage is great
for most people. It's the same whether you're earning 50 grand a year or 500 grand a year. You probably have expenses in the realm of that 10 to 30% that you could go through, and like, as you say, that you're not really getting enjoyment out of. It's just sort of something that you've got in the habit of doing, and you can actually reduce those and either spend that money in other areas that you are going to enjoy, or B, you're going to have some available there to put aside for your retirement, which is, I guess, what we're talking about here in the next section.
Look, it's good, and again, I'm digressing into a point that I'm going to digress about. I'm going to digress here, and then I thought,
this is the
I'm
next
digressing
point.
again to say that we always joke that we're going to have a 5-minute podcast, but it ends up being more. But I guess the point that I was going to originally digress into was that we know statistically when we see people that come to us for the first time, and statistically, their incomes are the highest they've ever been.
Yeah.
And statistically, their expenses completely fill up all their income.
Yeah, which makes no sense.
So
if you're a 30-year-old couple with 3 young kids, that should be when your budget's at its tightest, because your income hasn't really ramped up yet as you're getting older. Your expenses should be at their peak, or whether it's 30 or 40 or whatever. But you would think that by the time you come to meet with someone at 55, your budget should have freed up a bit. There should be the spare cash flow.
There should be, because you've been promoted. On average, not everyone, but on average, you've been promoted. Your earning capacity in your 50s, they say, is at an all-time high because you've risen to those levels of promotion. Generally. Or if you're a business owner, you've worked it all out, and you've got your business to a profitable level. And generally speaking, some, if not all, of your kids are starting to drop off as well in terms of
I won't let you digress into that soapbox.
So we know when we're sitting down with someone for the first time, we actually know that we can cut their expenses between 10 to 30% of their income, and they won't even feel it by the time we're done.
Most people are aware of that themselves. Most people can kind of look at it and go, well, our incomes have gone up over the last 20 years. Our expenses, the kids are now off our hands. Our expenses should have gone down, but at the moment, we've just been in the habit, as everyone is, whatever money hits the bank account every week or every fortnight, magically our expenses just swell up to fill that up. So that's the first immediate change.
And it's really the building block, because to take advantage of the other two things, you actually have to do this as well. So number one is to cut your expenses 10 to 30%. Look, it's not uncommon for two people in their 50s to be on middle of the range incomes. Let's call it $75,000 each, $150,000 before tax together. 10% of that. $15,000 for the year. We're going to look to, as a starting point, as a minimum, to actually say, okay, what if we were to put 10% of your wage into your superannuation funds at that point in time?
And that's exactly right. Is that, as you said, these other strategies work much better once you have freed up that bit of spare cash. There are things that you can always do to improve your position. You can take advantage of some of these other things without necessarily, if you just can't cut your expenses, then there's nothing you can do. But for most people, like you said, when you're making a percentage, if you look at it as it's 10% of your income, it's not a huge number.
No.
It probably feels like it if I said to someone, I'm going to come in and take $300 a week off you. It feels feel painful.
Yep.
But again, what we tend to find is that it only feels painful without the why, and that's as we roll through and go, what do you then use that spare cash flow for? You can kind of get a bit more motivated, a bit easier to come up with it if you know the effects of that. And so, and that's the second.
So it can be done. To summarise there, what we do with people usually is say, okay, let's just pretend this 10% or 15% or 20% is a tax, is an extra tax, because if the ATO put up taxes tomorrow, the government put up taxes tomorrow,
you just have to do it.
You just have to suck it up. And what you would find is that you wouldn't feel it because what would happen is that your other expenses would come into line. So if we start with that assumption and we say to people, we're just going to take this money first and put it into your superannuation fund on a per pay basis. Somewhere between 10 to 30% of your wage. Exactly. We're looking at somewhere between, for the average couple, 15,000 to 45,000 a year. That's going to go into their superannuation fund.
And that flows exactly into the second immediate change you can make once you've got that spare cash flow, which is, I love this phrase, super tax arbitrage.
That would be an absolutely fantastic racehorse name. You've got to put that on the list.
Super tax arbitrage. So what do you mean by that, Michael?
I like to call it free money. So probably this is the best example, and it starts with number one, because if you can't free up money to put into your super fund voluntarily, you cannot take advantage of this. So for the average couple, again, they can put in, I won't go into specifics here, but they can put in $30,000 on average per year to superannuation combined. So $15,000 each. Bearing in mind that you can put the money in, you can't claim a tax deduction for any more than $25,000 each per year, including what your employer puts in. So that's where we get to about $15,000 each, $30,000 combined. Now, in doing that, the money that they were going to pay 34.5% tax on, so that's $30,000. If they take that as income and don't put that into their super fund, they pay
$10,000 tax.
$10,000 in tax.
They only get to keep $20,000.
They only get to keep $20,000. So they're only spending $20,000 of that. If they put that into their superannuation fund instead, they pay 15% tax. So that's where we call that an arbitrage. An arbitrage,
the difference,
typically something where you can
pick up the difference.
Pick up a difference. There's a difference between a buying and a selling, or a selling and a buying, and it's a guaranteed rate of return.
That's exactly right. Is that if you look at that $30,000, even at a 34.5% tax rate, you were going to pay $10,000 in tax. You're now going to pay $4,500 in tax. You're picking up $5,500 off the ground. The ATO is getting $5,500 less. And this ties into, I think if you looked at for most people, their expenses, one of the biggest line items in people's budget that just isn't actually there is the tax that they're paying every year. We just see the dollar amount that hits the bank account. We don't see all the tax that's already being withheld and going to the ATO. So this is a big one of, as you say, it's an arbitrage because it's the same thing. It's the money that's going into your super. You get to keep that. You have that working for you in the background. You get to access that in the future. That's what you're going to retire on. So you're missing out on the ability to access that right now. But as we discussed, if we've already worked out how you can save that money so that you don't need to spend it right now, you're just picking up a pure tax saving there by putting that into super.
Absolutely, and for me, it's the best form of tax deduction because there are categories of tax deduction. So, look, a bad category of tax deduction is your accountant telling you you've got a tax problem as a business owner. You're going to go and buy an expensive car to appreciate it. So, I mean, that ultimately does nothing for you. In fact, I would say, you're spending every dollar extra you're spending, you're only getting a 27.5 cent benefit inside a business, or if you're.
And that's, I guess, the difference here is that it's not about, anytime someone says to me, I'm paying too much in tax, I say, right, well, that's easy. You give me the top bit of your income, I'll pay the tax on it and I'll keep what's left over.
That's right.
So what we're talking about here as an arbitrage is that you still get the benefit of that. That money goes into your super. It's working for you. You're in control of that. You get access to that when you retire. So you're not missing out on anything. It's not going to Toyota Finance. It's not going to anywhere else. It's not an expense that you're never going to see again. It's just money that's going into a different ownership structure, a different type of entity that you're going to be able to access in the future.
Yep. So even to look at those first two things, so someone comes in to see us for the first time, we say we're just going to take $30,000 off you, which I always have to be careful of saying.
It's not us.
I'm not
going
to
their bank account.
But we set it up so that the second that it hits their bank account, it goes straight into their superannuation fund, or it doesn't even hit their bank account first. It goes from their payroll straight into their super fund. We always then, and let's call that $30,000, which is smack bang in that 10 to 30%.
Now, the other point with that though is we keep talking about 30,000, but really it's actually 20,000 in terms of their net income.
It's $20,000 of pay difference. That's right. So it was they were only going to get $20,000 of that money because they were being taxed on average at $10,000 on that $30,000 top line figure. So go straight into their superannuation fund. We asked them to come back and see us, and that's usually somewhere between 4 to 8 pay periods. And I've never had a client come back to see me who hasn't said that it's been so easy and they haven't noticed the difference.
It's actually a really interesting one because you find that people argue with you before you actually make the change. If that makes sense. So you often make a recommendation, say you should do this, and people say we don't think we can afford to do it. We're not going to do it. And eventually, if you really think that, as in happens a lot in our case, if we say, well, look, you just have to do that because that's what you need to do to get where you've said you want to be in retirement. So you just have to do that. So generally, if you push back on that and say, no, we are going to make the change, just make the change now and then see how you feel in a couple of months' time. People, like you said, people never come back in 2 or 3 months' time and say, actually, no, we want to go back to having that net income.
I've never had anyone say that. I've never had anyone say that it's been difficult. They've just accepted it just the same way as they would accept one of those couples being made redundant for a period of time. Like you would get on with life and say, okay, we have to cull. And most of the stuff that you cull, again at the risk of digressing, the stuff that you cull is naturally the stuff that you're not getting the most enjoyment out of.
That's right.
The stuff that you keep is the stuff that you either have to keep, like the rates on your house,
or it's the things that
or the insurance on your house, or the things that you really enjoy. You really enjoy, and so people just don't. People report back that they haven't noticed the difference because, we've spoken before that a spreadsheet. We've put a spreadsheet together with all of the expenses you could spend in all the different categories, and it's 35 centimeters long. So if you can imagine that, that each little cell of a spreadsheet running down the page is minute. The categories of expenses is about 35 centimeters long, so it's over. It's longer than a ruler.
And that's exactly what we're talking about there. It's actually really not that hard to find that 10%.
No.
Using that as the figure, or in this case, the 30,000. It seems hard it seems hard until you actually look into it and until you actually make that change. And once they've, as you said, most of their clients, once they've made that change, they just don't notice it at all.
That's right.
Particularly when we're turning around and saying, hey, the motivation for this is that you're going to give up $30,000. That's going to go into your super fund. You're only going to pay $4,500 in tax. You're actually only going to be out of pocket $20,000. And that's then, I guess, the third part of this is, what's the effect of that extra money going into your super fund?
So to wrap up points 1 and 2, you have to do point 1 to take advantage of point 2. So that tax arbitrage, instead of paying $10,000 income tax, you pay $4,500 going into super seat. Free money is $5,500. That would be ordinary loss. So you have to do point 1, which is cut your expenses to take advantage of point 2. Point 3 is taking a look at the investment strategy internally inside your superannuation fund. So look, we won't spend any time today talking about whether you move from Q Super or Sun Super or Colonial First State or whatever
because it doesn't really matter.
Super fund is. What we'll talk about is internally in there.
The mix of asset classes
that you're invested into, and look, not a lot of people actually know. When we ask them initially what they're invested into. And most people are just in the default option, which is spread out across all of those different asset classes. And it's one of those things where we won't go into detail about what your investment strategy should be, because our compliance consultant would want to shoot us if we did that on a podcast. But basically, that's the third piece of the puzzle here, is to go, okay, we've got this $25,500 that's gone into our super fund. We've done the hard yards. We've put that money in. Now what we really want is we want that money working for us over the last 10 years of our working life and into retirement. So that's a huge one, is that if you look at steps one is your hard work. Step 2 is a bit of free money from the ATO. And step 3 is essentially getting your money to do the hard work for you after you've taken advantage of steps 1 and 2. So I think that's, and it's something that we tend to underestimate, because in that first year, for example, if you've got $25,500 additional going into super, whatever return you get on that doesn't really make a huge difference in that first 12 months. But what you find that human beings, our brain doesn't really comprehend how much the compounding effect of that is over time. So if you're able to get an 8% return on that extra $25,500, 8% annual return over the next 10 years and into the first 20 years of your retirement, the difference is astronomical compared to getting a 5% return on that money. Oh, absolutely. Like, so for the rest of your life, forgetting that you only have 10 years left in this example to work, if you can get an extra return, even by 2%, for the rest of your life, look, we're talking about the difference between it's over $1 million. Like by the time that someone's running out of money, you who is an extra 2% rate of return has actually grown their money throughout their retirement. So you have, we won't even put a figure on, but it's millions. It's millions more. So
and I think that's the big one that I'd say with these three. So these are the three immediate changes that you can make. And sometimes I think that it seems like, so obviously the sum of all these parts is greater than any one individual bit. So most people have been told, you should cut your expenses by 10% and save 10% of what you earn, and that's all great. You do need to do that. And people have also been told by their accountant, you should minimise your tax. Oh yeah, that's great. And someone's probably been told you should look at the investment strategy of your super fund. Make sure your money's working for you. But it's the reason there's these three immediate changes is that they're actually not hard to do right now, but the effect of them over the next 30 years of your life is astronomical. And it's kind of one of those things where you go, while you're still working, you're not going to see the impact of that because your day-to-day stays the same. But it's really the difference between running out of money at 70 versus running out of money at 90. And that's kind of what it's all about.
It's that difference. And to look at it from a pure enjoyment point of view, it's also the difference. So someone that does this at 55 versus someone that doesn't do this at 55, what the difference is that the person that if you look at it from a pure travel point of view, if we just put extra money to travel, so someone that does this at 55, the trade-off is that at 65, look, they could spend something like an extra $40,000 a year on travel. To over a period of say 15 to 20 years before the extra money that they've accumulated run out. So if you look at it purely from that point of view, we like to put things into trade-offs for people because giving up some of your income now is I mean, I say it doesn't hurt because
you just get used to it.
You just get used to it, and people have reported back that it doesn't hurt, and that they've got used to it fairly quickly, and they haven't felt claustrophobic. They haven't felt like they're missing out on anything. But let's say that it does hurt a little bit.
Yeah, it's then as
is that hurt worth it to actually have?
Yeah.
If you like travel, for example.
Yeah.
Is it worth it to have 10 fantastic overseas holidays for the first 10 years of your retirement?
That's right.
And see the world.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. It's all of this stuff is about those trade-offs, and it doesn't matter whether you're looking at cutting expenses or your investment strategy. There's no free lunch in any of this. There's no magic that we can do that other than maybe the super tax arbitrage. That sort of just feels like magic because there's no real pain there. But nothing that we talk about with our clients in these immediate levers that we can pull. There's no free lunch. It's just a matter of looking at their situation and what it is they're trying to achieve and going, okay, what are the choices that we need to make, or what are the changes that we need to make now that are going to allow you to get where you need to be in the future.
Absolutely. I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.